Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
The simple point that I made is that having children, becoming a father, becoming a mother, I really do think it changes your perspective in a pretty profound way. This is something, of course, we've recognized for hundreds of years in this country that human civilization has always recognized. But there's a deeper point here, Megan. It's not a criticism of people who don't have children. I explicitly said in my remarks, despite the fact the media has lied about this, that this is not about criticizing people who for various reasons didn't have kids. This is about criticizing the Democratic Party for becoming anti-family and anti-child.
J.D. Vance defending what has become an onslaught, a torrent of criticism about statements he made 3 years ago about childless, well, what was it, cat moms, childless cat ladies, not moms, cat ladies. Welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. The battle is on in Missouri. The polls are tightening. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. The latest poll out, at least from one pollster, shows some tightening in the tightly contested rates. And of course, at the national level as well, lots of debate. Was Vance a mistake? Who is going to be Kamala's VP choice? And on it goes. The rallies continue. Trump is returning to Butler, Pennsylvania, I believe this week on Wednesday, I think. And we're now, just 8 days away, right? And it's we don't have much time left. Stephanie Bell off from a beautiful MC job at the Trump train on Saturday, right?
We had a really fun day in Cooper County there at Pilot Grove. Hannah was there, too.
Hannah.
I was.
I told folks I thought the largest gathering of conservatives I would see in that location was producer Hannah's wedding. I was wrong. There were a ton of people there. They said at one point the convoy stretched almost 5 miles.
That's great. Great to see.
So
lots of energy.
Yeah, this is going to sound really bad, but, we get invited to a lot of events. And as I was pulling up to the Copper Penny, I think I had underestimated what this event was going to be. And I saw how far away they were parking people from the building. And immediately I was like, oh, this is a big deal. So I was really happy with their turnout. I think the organizers of the event were happy as well, but it was a lot of fun.
Congratulations to everyone that showed up, and especially to the hard workers that organized that thing. It's not easy to put that together. Lots of candidates, right? Making lots of speeches.
Tons of candidates, tons of speeches. But we also heard from other folks, some business folks, some ministers, some issue-based speeches. Heard from my former state rep and now with Right to Life, Sarah Walsh, for example. So it was just really, it was a good day for conservative causes here in mid-Missouri.
Well, we've talked about the childless cat ladies attack on J.D. Vance. I think it's an interesting and probably valid conversation piece.
Should I take offense to that?
Well, I think that's the problem. A lot of folks on the left in the Democrat Party, John Marsh, are saying, well, look at this. This guy has it out for her. He is really against and is denigrating people that don't have kids. He said, well, if you listen to the whole thing and take it all in context, that's exactly not what I was talking about. I was talking about the fact that people that have chosen not to have kids have turned this country into an anti-family, anti-child type of a policy.
And Hannah,
well, it was 3 years old, right? And immediately the national media said, well, he was going after Kamala Harris. That's who he was going after.
Well, and Hannah, you don't have any cats yet, so you're not a childless cat lady, right? Do you have a cat?
I do not.
There you go. You're good.
Although California has the most stray cats per capita that I have ever seen in my life. It's crazy.
There's a lot of them there.
There is.
Well, I mean, when someone tells you, we talk about dinks a lot, and when someone tells you they choose not to have children, the various reasons they give is climate change, right? I don't want to bring the kids into a world that'll either worsen climate change or they'll have to live in the Armageddon that will be climate change.
I have never once heard that out of anybody's mouth.
You've not heard that?
I've seen it printed in like weird media pieces, but no one's ever said that.
I have relatives. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I've heard that. That's a legitimate, that's something you hear. Or things are so messed up in this world. Look at this. You can't buy a house. You can't rent. The economy is terrible. We can't afford it. Meanwhile, buying $20 a pound cheese and, Maseratis and everything. So I think you can make an argument that people are making a choice to, it's more difficult to raise kids than to not. Let's be honest about it. It's much more difficult. It's costly. It's expensive. So unless you're ultra uber wealthy, that's a common argument too. So I think what he was saying, actually, no one wants to say. He's saying what a lot of people think, and I'm not saying the people that choose not to have kids are bad people, but they're choosing not to be sacrificial to perpetuate A, the race, the human race, and B, to repopulate the country. That's a conscious choice. That's not who he's talking about. He's talking about, well, that's who he is talking about. He's not talking about people that have infertility problems, that have problems that, they can't have children but they want to. That's a totally different matter.
Perhaps.
Come on, I'm ready to have your...
I think maybe you and I disagree on this. I mean, I have friends who chose not to have kids, and there's like 1,000 different reasons. Most of them are personal, and they don't really have a lot to do with like the larger society. I do think that the economy plays a part, and it's playing a bigger part now than it ever has. And I get it. Years and years and years ago, people were poor and they still had kids. Back then, though, you could also make them like work, which is like frowned upon right now, right?
But there you go. But wait a minute,
you just put them out on the farm.
But
so
Stephanie,
they were like an investment.
But that's my point. The policies are anti-child. You can't raise a kid to go work and show up on time and listen to Mr. Jones, the hardware store owner. If the hardware store owner looks at him wrong, then it's somehow child abuse. I mean, you can't slap your kid and give him a slap on the butt without literally getting turned into the cops. If Granny sees you at the store at Walmart slapping your kid on the butt, the policies are anti-family, anti-Christian values, anti-proliferation and expansion. Be fruitful and multiply is a biblical thing. The left is an anti-biblical movement, and we should call it what it is. Now, people that choose not to have, they're not bad people. They're not bad people, but they're going to tend to favor policies. They're not going to naturally be thinking at every political turn and every discussion, what can we do to make the family stronger in America? Because that's not in their lexicon. That's not on their mind. That's not what they're thinking. Is it? Not in my world.
I mean, I guess as a mother of three, like you would think that I would be like all pro-family, and I am pro-family, but at the same time, I'm not like, I don't look through every single thing through the lens of, does this benefit the family? I mean, I look through the same way that like curbing inflation would help me, it would help Hannah, who at this time doesn't have any kids. I mean, these policies that are hurting families are hurting everybody. And so while I think there are some policies that I think affect families specifically, I think most of the people that I know, it's not these like overarching family policies. They're not thinking about politics when they make these choices.
And guess that's not who he was talking about. What he said was childless cat ladies that are running this country. So people that rise. Kamala Harris could give a flying rat's butt about family.
There you go.
She family schmamly. I mean, she's got a couple of. I mean, her policies are communist. Her party is the one that won't allow gig workers. Gig workers are pro-family because it allows mom to do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. J.D. Vance is right, I think, absolutely right in terms of cultural, positive, historically provable, empiric sociology works. Families work. Families, faith, and freedom work. It got us to this dance. Politically, Trump made a huge mistake. They didn't vet him. There's going to be more like this that comes out. And
this is the least weird controversy about J.D. Vance that has come out.
I think this is...
That's for sure. Well, didn't it come out that like he really wanted Burgum, and then at the last minute, like he got all this pressure to pick Vance? I don't know. I mean...
Don Jr.
Who are we going to pick that doesn't have something in the past that they've said? I mean, what we know is that, I mean... we knew this day was coming in that he's our first millennial pick on the ticket. And I think, years ago we said at some point we are going to elect someone who has a social media history. Now, where everything when you were really stupid from 18 to 30 was recorded, right? And every stupid thing you said online still exists. We are starting to enter that era. And granted, a lot of this isn't from his social media, but obviously most things he said in the past are probably on tape somewhere. Now, he's changed his positions, especially, I mean, he was not a Trump guy, right? And so whether or not, you dig up all this other stuff and he still recommits to some of the things he said in the past, or whether he says, I'm somebody new. I mean, this is something we are going to have to deal with as a society because, and I think it's weird because Republicans go both ways, right? We say, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be canceled for saying something stupid a long time ago. But then sometimes we're like, but that person should be canceled for something they said stupid a long time ago. And so, I mean, we're going to get it with J.D. Vance. I suspect whoever Kamala picks, I mean, the Oppo people are going to be immediately digging all of the stuff from that person's background.
Well, I mean,
as well.
everyone's been digging up Kamala's background, Trump's background.
Right.
It's part of the job, I think, in a way, of like what you sign up for.
And I don't think, I mean, if you think that the Trump people didn't vet J.D. Vance, I disagree. I think they vetted him. They saw stuff like this, and they knew most people in Trump's base would agree with J.D. Vance, like Randy has said this morning.
But it is.
I think it's a fabulous sociologic position. It's just it's a hazardous political position.
Well, and to Stephanie's point, you bring up a very good point about they're probably digging up all sort on both sides. They have a general idea. They probably got about 15 to 20 people, I'm sure, that they're looking at, and they'll be looking at various statements. So whoever is picked on the Democratic side, they'll immediately criticize them as well. I will say this, that and obviously a lot of interest in the presidential race. The primary commercials this weekend have really gotten nasty in Missouri. I mean, this attorney general's race between Andrew Bailey and Will Scharf, goodness gracious, holy Mary, Mother of God. I watched some of the commercials this weekend, and again,
some of the direct mail pieces are out there as well.
But you have to look really closely on those TV ads to see if I'm not even sure they're the candidates that are it could be like a third party.
Generally not. I think a lot of the ads are done by PACs.
But they're basically accusing each other of being rhinos. So that has gotten ugly, and that's in the governor's race is definitely nasty or whatever. But I remind all the candidates, I know a lot of them listening on the Republican side, President Ronald Reagan, Randy, had an 11th commandment, if you remember.
Yes.
I don't think that's 11th commandment probably exists anymore in politics, but he did so. But it's gotten nasty. I'm sure the Democrats, I'm not aware of any nasty primary, except in the 1st Congressional District on the Democratic side, and that one is really, really nasty.
And, of course, we got a big endorsement over the weekend from President Trump.
Oh my God! I don't
he endorsed
know.
three, but they're
It's the Eric endorsement of 2022 all over again, and I just want to know
what was it all
what
about?
does he have against us, the Show Me State? Why does he keep doing this to us?
I think it makes him look less. It just, I mean, what's the point? I mean, come on, Donald. If you're going to make an endorsement, make an endorsement.
He could have just as easily not said anything and had the same effect, I feel.
He said basically the three big candidates. He named them in no particular order: Ashcroft, Kehoe, and Eigel. He said you can't go wrong with any of them, but it is interesting.
I actually think it matters a little bit here in just that, you've got a lot of folks pointing the finger saying, you're a rhino, you're a rhino, you're the rhino, I'm the most Trump guy, I'm the most Trump guy. And I think this equalizes it. Trump's gold in the Summer Olympics in Atlanta, a famous gymnast. And now, Hannah, have you been watching Simone Biles?
I have.
She's doing so good.
She is. Even she kind of tweaked an ankle or a calf injury.
Yeah.
So we're getting some thunder here in
No
the
kidding.
studio.
Wow.
Sorry about
Holy
that.
cow, yeah.
No, she aggravated an old injury just a little bit and kind of had the nation holding its breath, but it seems like she's pulled through.
Yeah, she came right back on the area there, all taped up, and went right back after it.
Well, we do need to get to those opening ceremonies at some point, but regardless of the opening ceremonies, I know my kids have enjoyed watching a little bit of the gymnastics and the swimming, and we did not watch the opening ceremonies as a family. We avoided that. All right, so back to Veep Watch. I haven't heard anything, Randy, really about the timing of when Kamala is actually going to pick. We're less than, I think, about 3 weeks away from the convention. Although we do know that you're giving me the squinty eyes. Although we do know Mark Kelly out of Arizona is kind of rising to the top. So I'm sure they are trying to vet him right now. Yes.
Well, he'll probably be their antidote to the border issue, right? Because I think he's been more pro-border control than other Dems.
And he fits the profile, I think, of who they're kind of looking for. So I'm sure there is massive vetting going on in the background.
Probably hasn't said anything about childless cat ladies the last time I checked either.
When that announcement comes out, we will have it for you. Of course, Randy, you mentioned this week Trump is headed back to Pennsylvania. I think that is on Wednesday.
Yep, I think.
We also are hearing that the Federal Reserve is not going to lower interest rates this week. And then today we are expected to hear more from Biden about his new plan for Supreme Court reforms and constitutional limits on presidential immunity. The real question is, I mean, everyone's calling it Biden's plan. It's not his plan. He's not there. Whose plan is this? And why this late in the game? You know, they've been talking about the Supreme Court now for, I mean, they've been really hammering on the Supreme Court for 2 years now, Randy? But today, Biden is expected to say he's got some plans. He wants 18-year term limits. He wants to limit his own power, presidential immunity power, which is not really his own power anymore because it would never affect him. But he's going to lay out a policy that also includes some of these things like ethics reforms for the Supreme Court.
So the number of judges would take a supermajority, right? But the term limits would take a constitutional amendment.
Yes.
I mean, what's the likelihood of that happening? This is political pandering.
It 100% is.
What you hear this whenever they get a judgment. I think what he meant to say was, look, folks who have chosen not to have kids, it's sort of like if you're a woman and you have women kind of problems, you want to see a woman doctor because she understands more. And a guy won't understand. I mean, I've lived that my whole life, right? And there may be some amount of truth to that. There's things I don't understand. I think what he's saying is people that either choose not to have kids usually have interesting motivations for that, right? They choose, and it's because they are clearly not wanting to, their very behavior is not pro-growth of family because they're not having a family. Okay, that's fine. And I think that he's saying that affects policy. I mean, look at abortion on the left. They're for really not having kids. That's the most not having kids policy you could ever have.
Yeah, it wasn't apparent to me in the last 4-year cycle, really. It's not like I didn't go in and I'm voting for all the people with kids. But I do think as a parent, it's oh, these people are kind of, they feel some of the same struggles that I do, and they the expense of childcare and other things that maybe someone else doesn't. And I remember specifically the moment it hit me was when I was watching everyone get sworn in January, and they were all on stage together. Mm-hmm. And so you're thinking Schmidt, Ashcroft, even at Greitens at the time, and that whole stage was just littered with children. If you recall, there was so many kids, and I thought, wow, it was incredible. It was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, we're electing people who are close to my age, which is strange, and then B, who really have solid most of them have
all that
solid
said,
family foundations.
Like you said, the people that I know that don't have kids, some are my very best friends, they're not making policy, but they are usually very involved in youth activities at their church, or they're involved at, the sponsoring a softball team or a baseball team or a girls volleyball team or something, So they do find ways to support the family. It's not about that. I think it's a very treacherous statement he made. It was probably a reckless statement. And I guess if anyone can walk it back, it's going to be J.D. Vance. He's very, very good at that. Very
He's
effective.
Walked a lot of other statements back.
And he's done a great job at it. And so we'll have to see where it goes. Now,
I don't know how much we can say here, but have you seen the memes about J.D. Vance and the couch?
Yeah.
I think, isn't that made up?
But I think
so, but it's been blew up.
But it's been discredited,
What about the fact that maybe he has eyeliner? I mean, that's on the internet.
Do you think he's wearing contacts that are blue? He's got blue eyes. You can get tinted contacts.
I think most men would be benefited by caring more about their appearance.
Yeah? Why are you looking? John, she's looking at me as she says that. I don't know. I tried that retinol stuff. Sammy gave me some retinol. I didn't see a difference.
How long did you use it?
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know, a couple weeks.
I ate some celery. Am I looking skinny today?
John, I guess I don't know, maybe we should have thought about this looking, taking better care of our skin 2 decades ago. Think so?
You think?
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean,
you're probably right, especially from risk of skin cancer as you get older.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind that they're kind of commenting on J.D. Vance and maybe that he's made some changes or whatever, because we hear it all the time about people like Kristi Noem, right?
Mm-hmm.
She looks completely different.
Yeah.
And she gets a lot of criticism if we're going to criticize her, then I think J.D. Vance is fair game.
Absolutely. Fair game. Now, Jillian Michaels, who is gay.
Oh, yeah.
I love her.
She makes a statement. Here's
what's the weight loss show?
She's from The Biggest Loser.
Yes.
She was on there for almost the show's whole run.
Yeah, super workout advocate and big, she's a buff gal, really, really great body composition. She's been in that biz for couple decades. And so the setup is that at the end of this ceremony, during the opening ceremony, there's this woman who claims to be, I think she's a Jewish lesbian queer, is what she calls herself. They put this headdress on her that it sort of, I think, is meant to emulate the halo that often pictures of Christ have with the little beams coming from it, the light beams coming from it. So she's sitting in the center of the table, and then there's drag queens. Oh, there's a little kid here, too, which I couldn't understand. Helene was asking about that. I couldn't explain that. Little kid, but otherwise, clearly it's an LGBTQ parody on The Last Supper. And Jillian Michaels says on her Twitter feed, Dear fellow gays, we demand tolerance and respect, but then make a mockery of something sacred for over 2 billion Christians. This type of hypocrisy and lack of understanding is a bad look. We get outraged when the extreme right bashes us, but then we do this stuff. She didn't say stuff. What kind of reaction do you think they'll have towards the LGBTQ plus community after this? This is capital not how we break down barriers. It's how you build them. I thought, interesting.
Yeah, I think
And
good to
wise.
call out. Yeah, to call out her own side, and it was. I remember. I have fond memories of watching the Olympic ceremonies, opening ceremonies with my parents, and as a family, and watching. Remember the drums and like the drama, and it was like music, and just like it was.
Muhammad Ali lighting the torch.
Yes.
Right. And those are memories that I won't be making with my family, that they've stolen from me. That I feel like, and what'd they say? That this is supposed to be inclusive.
Right.
And Christians are like, hey, wait a minute. I don't feel very included. And so I am mourning the loss of the Olympic ceremonies as a family-friendly, inclusive event.
And what's so funny is the headline on the Washington Post story on the Olympic organizers' answer to the criticism, the headline is Paris Olympics organizers sorry for Last Supper at opening ceremony. And that's not really what they said. What they really say is, we're sorry if you took it that way, if you took offense. Not like, oh, did we goof? What a huge mistake. Wow, did we shoot ourselves in the foot on that one? They're not going to do that.
Why does it have to be about sex anyway, right? Like, why? Like, shouldn't it be about just, like, great athleticism and, like, accomplishments? And I don't understand. I feel like the organizers were way off base, and I'm hoping that the outcry and the outrage here means we'll get something different next time around.
Maybe had Columbia City officials weigh in and help them plan the event or something.
Yeah, I wonder.
That's fair.
Maybe one of the council members was involved in that. I'm looking at a caption here on one of the news reports from a TV station where they had models walking across the River Seine, I guess a little bridge, but they say models present creations while walking a catwalk. Cats are the theme this morning, right?
Yes.
I don't know. You got a cat. Yeah, First of all, I got turned off from the very beginning when they brought the people in on boats running down the. I just didn't. I mean, what is this? An excursion on the Missouri River on some paddle wheeler? I don't know. It
did nothing for me.
Didn't do much.
Made me pretty angry.
Yeah. Wasn't there an Olympic? No, I guess that wasn't. That was a Super Bowl. Yeah, when they had the Spice Girls. It was a Super Bowl, wasn't it?
Well, and it's unfortunate, I think, because think about working your whole life for a goal, right? Like you have sacrificed everything, your family sacrificed everything. You are so excited to compete for your country. You finally get to Paris. Now's your chance. And rather than all of the major news networks telling your story, they're talking about this.
It's unfortunate, but I think, what is the right response from Christians? I think the right response is you just stand by and let them make fools of themselves. Turn the TV off, go have your kids maybe read a little biblical story, one of the different accounts of the Last Supper and what it means, and explain to them how, there's a right way and a wrong way to conduct yourself.
I think, like many other people, judging by my Facebook feed, my kids are off at church camps this week and will not be watching the Olympics. And I think a lot of other folks are in that same boat.
Yeah, but it was fun to watch. So last night was the swimming competition. Well, I don't know if all of it, but I saw some of it, and then some of the gymnastics competition.
Yep.
I wasn't able to watch the whole thing. So, what's the story? Have we finished the gymnastics, or was that still ongoing? I
believe it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was funny. It's funny, when you don't know much about a sport, it's always fun to try to do the rapid boot camp learn by listening to the commentators and then look at the scores. So I turned it on as they were doing the vault, where they jump on the thing and then do the twisty and they come down. Okay, the vault. And it was fun because the first lady that we saw, I think she was a foreign lady, she stepped back. When she made the plant, she stepped back. And they said, oh, that's going to be a penalty of 3 points.
Probably
Okay.
0.3, but okay, yes.
Oh, 0.3. I thought it was 3 points. Well, whatever, 0.3, whatever.
Really? Okay.
And so, but then when there were two American ladies, Simone was one of them, I forget, Childs, I think.
Biles.
No, there was Biles and Childs.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. Wasn't there a Childs and a Biles? I think there's a Childs and a Biles. I don't
Jordan Childs.
Yeah. And at any rate, they stepped back a little bit, just a teeny bit, but they didn't get it. And they said that's because the difficulty on the exercise, you get a little grace for that.
Yeah, it's similar. I think diving is the same way. Like you get, I mean, if you're trying something really hard and it doesn't quite work out, you still get credit for trying something, really hard. If if you're doing a cartwheel and you do it perfectly, and I do like a triple flip and I take a step, I should still get a better score than you.
But if I do an incredibly difficult hysterectomy and nick an artery, they don't give me grace for that.
Well, none of these people are doctors.
One of Bill Eigel's donors will sue me.
That's for sure.
Right? The trial lawyers?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You don't get because, he did an incredibly difficult thing. He nicked an artery. Person required blood. You know what I mean?
Well, you chose that profession. You're not.
But what I'm saying is, if a penalty's a penalty, why isn't a penalty a penalty? You get extra points if you're doing the difficulty. So that's in that silo. So why are they applying difficulty points and giving you credits on the step back penalty?
We're just trying to have fun, Randy. We're just watching the Olympics.
John, you want to back me up here or not? It's a logical point I'm making. Logical.
Well, Simone Biles, she got like what did they say? Like
she got a
14.7. Yeah, it was like the highest on the apparatus when she was doing her thing.
I'm glad they gave her a break. I gave her a break in my own mind, but why on one vault do you get a step back penalty, on the other because you did a tough thing? Oh, well, we'll waive the step back penalty.
Yeah, but here's the thing. All of the athletes, all of the coaches, they all know that that's how it works. So they play the game accordingly. It's not like this is some judge that's just wanting to spur of the moment screw them up.
Which is why United States representatives, the day after the election, start fundraising for the next election, because that's what the game's all about, right? It's about fundraising. It's not about governing.
It depends on who they are.
I thought that's what they all had to do. I thought that was just the game.
No, there are some people who I think are interested in governing and know that in order to govern that they are going to have the funds necessary to get elected. And there are other people who are less interested in governing and more interested in game playing.
As we wind down to the primaries, can we have a discussion when we come back about a theory I have about politics?
Sure.
The poopy pants are in the building.
It's not poopy and his Stein of Knowledge will weigh in on all things political. And that latest the Missouri Scout poll. Interesting. That is Remington, isn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And he's been on his F-150 campaign tour.
He's
People
putting
are
some
like,
miles on that buggy.
He's almost, who is that guy? James Corden with like carpool karaoke.
Oh my God.
He's got his little video camera in, and like people jump in. We're gonna have to suggest to him that he does like a song or two next time.
Good. Yeah, that'd be good.
Oh, I love that. What Taylor Swift song do you think they would sing?
Hey, so what would happen to our campaigns if we had some major campaign election funding reform, campaign finance reform? Since Citizens United, you hear more actually in behalf of the candidates, I think. I don't know if I haven't done a count of the commercials, but it seems like I see an awful lot of PAC commercials, which some are more or less transparent about who they're supporting or, on the other hand, who they're attacking, But I'm bothered by the fact that, after all, politicians are human beings. And I don't know.
Most of them.
And I don't know about you, but when I get a gift from someone, it always endears them to me. I was like, oh, man, it must be my friend. They gave me a gift. So if they asked me to do something for them, go out of my way, I'm probably more likely to do that for them than someone who hadn't. That's just human nature, right? If someone gives you a gift. And so when it comes to governing and influence, I don't know. I just wonder how objective people can be when they're given huge
You realize that's
campaign
like
funds.
entirely the liberal position, right? Like, I would just rather be transparent.
It's a classically liberal position.
Why should, if I'm successful and I have money, why should I not be able to support a candidate that I want to support?
As long as they don't continue to perpetuate and extend your success, I'm okay with that. But what assurance do you have that human behavior, when you come to them wanting some policy position that'll benefit you, who's to say that they'll say, you know what, that's not in the best interest of the republic?
Well, there are laws against quid pro quo.
Well, yeah, right. Uh-huh. Yeah.
There are people who have been in trouble for that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like universal basic income. We just give everybody $100. What's that called? Universal campaign finance. That's been a liberal position for everywhere. We give everybody a certain amount, or it's capped at a certain amount. That's ridiculous.
What I'm really speaking of here is big organizations and Citizens United. I'm not sure that I agree with the Citizens United thing anymore. I've been weighing that because I'm concerned about crony capitalism. I really am. I think most people that look at our political and economic landscape would say, wow, it's really hard to compete in this environment when you got Google and you got Northrop Grumman and you got Lockheed Martin and you got it's really hard to compete.
I will.
If you're a little guy,
I'll grab the stat. I don't have it right in front of me here, but if we talk about money in politics, I think the stat is people spend 10 times so you look at all of the money spent in politics in a year, in an election year, and people spend 10 times that amount of money on Halloween decorations.
That's so random.
Well, there's something wildly appropriate there, I think,
Yeah.
Trying to scare the voters into voting.
It's just that you hear so much about money in politics, and if you actually look at the numbers, it's not that much money. And what
tightening, whether it's governor, CD3, attorney general, well, and not so much on treasurer. Scott Faughn joins us now, publisher of the Missouri Times and host of This Week in Missouri Politics, with his great stein of knowledge. Scott, what are the tea leaves? What are the polling? What's the buzz telling you? You've been on your, I don't know, have you had to replace the engine in that Ford F-150 of yours on your tour?
No, it ain't a Chevy. It's a Ford F-150 tour. But I'll tell you, it's like Christmas Eve. And yes, absolutely, Hannah, I will sing some Skinner in that truck. You know, many people have said I'm the greatest living karaoke singer in the Western Hemisphere. Been said many times. Well known on High Street.
Well, you know, Scott, I am from the Show Me State, so I think I'm going to need to see some evidence of this claim.
You meet me at High Street Pub Friday night, and I'm just going to be honest with you. Many people have called me the songbird of my generation. You might add yourself to that list Friday evening.
Noted.
We need a duet between you and whoever is invited into the F-150. That's what we need.
I do little Islands in the Stream. I should have talked to Carla May. Carla May's a good singer. I do Islands in the Stream, Kitty and Dolly, except this time it's Scotty and Carla.
I love it.
What about any Taylor Swift mashups?
I don't really know any of those songs, so that's going to be a little tougher for me.
Since you promoted yourself as the king of the world, I think maybe a Celine Dion matchup might be on Mark.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, John. I just want everyone to know that I personally have boycotted every second of the Olympics and the Oscars until the designated hitter is ended. And I've done this for about 10 years now, and it's really one of the better decisions I've ever made in life.
All right.
I'm just that principled.
Scott, we got a big endorsement over the weekend, or maybe a non-endorsement. I think we disagree about the impact of the Trump endorsement in the governor's race this morning. What do you make of that?
I think Trump has treated us like squirrels 2 summers ago, and he treated us like fools again. It's bizarre. If you're endorsing everyone, you're not endorsing anyone. And I know that in some circles, you know, this could get me sent to a camp somewhere someday for segments. I just think it's stupid to endorse more than one person. It looks weak. Everything I love about Trump, this is the opposite of it. Indecisive, weak, kind of suck up. I just thought it was dumb.
Well, we got some new polling out this weekend, too, in that race. It's showing Ashcroft and Kehoe basically in a dead tie with Bill Eigel at 29%, with Bill Eigel trailing at 18%. Does that reflect your stein of knowledge? Do you think that's where that race is?
You know, I've seen, you know, the best polls are usually the ones that aren't public. And then every time you cite a Remington poll, you have the other side of the campaign say, well, they work with one of the campaigns, in this case, Kehoe. And, you know, polling is so subjective. Who knows? The general average of the polls I've seen, and again, most of these are private polls taken for people that are putting money in races or whatever. And then Kehoe has the only with enough money to do actual, real tracking polling. Kehoe is somewhere around 30. Ashcroft's about 2 or 3 points behind him, and Eigel's about 2 or 3 points behind him. Eigel had surge. I mean, you know, the truth is, folks at Zimmer should take note. Advertising works. When Ashcroft was up by 30 points, Kehoe advertised and knocked him down. Then Eigel started surging. Kehoe advertised and knocked him down. And the problem with it is nobody's really figured out a way you can knock points off the other guy and you get them all. You end up sending them in a three-way race. They go to the other candidate, the third candidate, or they go to undecided. And I think that's what you've seen over and over is almost Kehoe playing whack-a-mole with the Ashcroft and Eigel campaigns. Now, the trial lawyers stepped up for Eigel, and I love it. It's my favorite thing of politics is to watch people talk about the swamp and then get $500,000 from some Washington, D.C. dark money fund. I mean, I'm not particularly against it. I just think don't tell me you're the swamp without telling me you're the swamp. You have 3 very establishment candidates. If you like the swamp, you have 3 candidates that ain't going to change much about it. If you don't, you're just a whiner and you kind of just tell me you're a moron without telling me you're a moron. So it is going to be a close race. Bill Eigel could absolutely win this thing. Bill Eigel has the message folks want. Just, I'll burn it all down. I'll cut all your taxes and I'll give you more free stuff. Now, is he going to do that? No. Can anybody do that? No. But it's what folks want to hear, and he says it so well. Bill is an accomplished politician. Does very well. Jay, I think Jay's path is he just hopes Eigel and Kehoe shoot at each other enough and the votes fall to him. I honestly don't think there's anything Jay Ashcroft knew to impact that. I think he's totally at the mercy or the up to the odds of the gods to see how many votes fall to him. And Kehoe, he just got to keep tamping them both down. It is an interesting race, and I'll tell you, Stephanie, the reason I think it's such a late breaking race is during the times most Missourians would usually start to take these candidates in, think about them, come up with a decision. You had an amazing debate that everybody talked about. The president got shot. The other president quit, and now you have a new lady stepped on the stage. These are historic events, and Missourians haven't had time to raise their kids, do their job, plan a vacation, get to T-ball, and think about the governor's race while you have these historic events happening. I think that's why you're seeing so many races with such large undecideds at this point.
That's Scott Faughn, joins us every Monday on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Scott, what do you think? Might Kehoe miss a bet by not taking part in the debates with Eigel and Ashcroft, or is that a strategy?
Guys, I was listening earlier about the campaign finance thing. I would love if Missourians cared at all where you got your money from. I'm kind of with Stephanie. I don't care how much money you take. Just tell me where you got it from. Missourians don't care where you get your money from. They don't care if it's dark money. They don't care if some rich guy in New York wants to make his daddy attorney general. They just don't care. And they just don't care if you do a debate. And the only way candidates will start doing debates again, and look, I'm on the side of I'd love to see more, but the only way they'll do debates again is if the voters start making them. And I'm seeing no evidence. If Mike Kehoe loses this race, in my opinion, it'll have zero to do with the fact he didn't debate.
What do you think about the campaign money deal and the fact that Missourians may not care, but they may be influenced by that money and where it comes from? No?
Show me a better system. I mean, the best system, I've seen many different systems. The federal stuff is always a mess, but anytime you say the word federal, it's just a dumpster fire. Those Harvard people have wrecked the federal government so badly. I don't even know if a group of Mizzou folks can figure it out. I really don't.
Agreed.
It's just such a mess.
Yeah.
But in the state level, I've seen different funding systems. By far, the gold standard, the absolute best system we had was you take all the money in the world and whatever amount, but you document it. I think there should be monthly campaign finance reports, just like you balance your checkbook. I think the reporting should be tighter. There should be more reporting and less rules. And I think that would be the best system. Yep. You're never going to keep politics out. The candidates would rather have the money than have it in some nefarious PAC. If you're going to say it, put your name on it.
Bingo.
I'm a believer in more reporting. But look, if I make money and I want to support a candidate, why is your business tell me I can't? And do they owe them something? Of course they do. Let's not live in a fantasy land. But most of the time, when you get to the big checks, when you get to $100,000 check, it's not because you're promising you'll be for something. It's because you have a record of standing for something. People that are getting, like, you see these huge checks from Kehoe, it's because he's been a huge supporter of Missouri business and Missouri charter schools and on, and Missouri Auto Dealer. I mean, go down the list of people. It's not because Kehoe's getting this money because he just popped in and said, I'll switch my position and support you. Because he has a track record of 10 years in government supporting this thing. So
good point.
The system is bad. The reformers have screwed it up beyond belief. No. And God, I wish St. Louis people would just stay and say, well,
good points. No, good points all. And the distinction between federal and state and the influence that can be exerted is truly worthy of consideration.
Thank you, Randy. Scott Faughn is our guest, Missouri Times publisher, 93.9 The Eagle and News Radio 950 KDBOS. Scott is live. In terms of everything on the ballot, and I have all three sample ballots from the three parties in front of me, Scott, I don't think there's any question, at least in my mind, the biggest issue that affects the most people's lives on the ballot, if you took one, is going to be Constitutional Amendment 1, and it deals with child care, which is a huge issue. Probably nobody knows much about it unless they've read the sample ballot, but it's a huge deal. And I'll read one sentence from this ballot measure. It said, quote, "This is intended to make child care more available, which would support the well-being of children, families, the workforce, and society as a whole," end of quote. Constitutional Amendment 1, you're all going to be voting on that when you walk into that voting booth. Scott, does that pass or not next Tuesday?
I always vote no if it's very confusing. And even if it's not very confusing, I usually always vote no. I have no idea. I think that you've seen an election cycle. Again, folks might have had a chance to think about this if there wasn't presidents being shot and presidents going and becoming a vegetable live in a debate. I think Missourians have our primary is in a little bit of a tough time. I've always advocated our primary should not be on the presidential year or for governor. It should be on its own. I think Missourians don't have the bandwidth to take on the major historical facts, also the fact that Cardinals are terrible, and all these other races, and then come up with a child care position. I figured it'll be a gut instinct, and most of these things, I've not seen a lot of advertising supporting it.
Right.
If I had to guess, that folks would vote no. But I'll tell you, this is why this IP reform stuff is so far out of hand. This is a legislative matter. And so I'll be voting no because this is something legislative. If we need more child care, go tell Rudy Veet, right? Go tell David Tyson Smith, which he'd probably say they are. Go tell Dave Griffin. In my opinion, this is another example of an abuse of the IP process.
Okay, Randy's telling me we've only got about a minute left, but I want to get back to this polling. The polling, this Remington poll, again, shows a tight race also for Lieutenant Governor as well as Secretary of State. And then it also shows Vivek Malik, our current treasurer, basically running away with it. Are you in agreement with those numbers? Or
Again, I think the folks at the Zimmer Advertising Department should keep a copy of this poll. The one race where the spending's been probably 10-1 is Vivek's. And Vivek is up by a substantial margin. It's not a coincidence. The other races have had either Secretary of State where, very limited money has been spent, or you have races like the AG and Lieutenant Governor, the two that have spent the most are doing very well. There's a correlation to this. And I'm also excited, Stephanie. We're going to do a show Thursday night on KMOS. Myself, Mike Mahoney, Joe Manning, Emily Manley, and you. We're going to have a good time. We're going to talk politics and maybe fish some predictions out. I don't know how much weight you put on this particular poll, but there is a consensus that you in every race, you could be the person that spends the most money. I can probably pick the winner.
Oh, all right. So Thursday night, Stephanie's going to be on on the Mighty Mox, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he said KMOS, I believe. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a television show, KMOS, PBS, here in Central Missouri.
KMOS TV. I thought I heard X.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Joe Manning is a legend in St. Louis. Mike Mahoney's obviously a reporting legend in Kansas City.
Good.
We're going to bring in Emily Manley and Stephanie, and I'm going to get to kind of sit in the corner and watch. We're going to have a good time.
Oh,
It'll
boy.
be
That'll be interesting.
Thursday evening at 7. They'll replay it again Monday night. We'll talk all things these primaries.
That's awesome.
Sounds
and,
fun.
I'll get to feel like Randy when Stephanie sets me straight for an hour.
Oh, man, watch out. You get that question mark on your text. You know what that means, Scott. It's bad. All right. Hey, thanks a lot.
been so sweet. I don't know why I suddenly love Snoop Dogg, but I do.
And we do have Snoop Dogg audio to play maybe later in the show about his play-by-play commentary. But Flavor Flav has teamed up, and he is the, quote, official hype man for the USA men's and women's water polo teams.
Who is this person?
Okay.
Who is it?
He's a rapper from, what, the 90s?
What's
Is he
the name?
one with the big clock?
Yeah,
Yes.
boy.
Yes.
What's the name?
Flavor Flav.
I'll have to Google it. Go ahead.
Be careful.
Don't play anything on air before we screen it.
Yeah, no
but
kidding.
I won't.
So that was made official July 1st. And of course, he's in Paris, cheering the teams on. He has his own water polo cap that's all decked out in, red, white, and blue. And he's just been cheering the teams on. One of the athletes on Instagram several months ago had posted that a lot of the Olympians in the, maybe less known sports work second, maybe third jobs just to pay to get to go to the Olympics. And Flavor Flav saw that and was like, nah, that's not cool. So he has signed like a 5-year sponsorship for these athletes. And he's super excited to be in Paris and cheering them on. And it's pretty adorable to watch.
My kids asked me the other night, what's water polo? And I didn't know how to respond. I was like, I don't exactly know.
It's brutal. Like, if you've never watched it, it's not a sport I keep up with, but during the Olympics, it's one that I find entertaining to watch. They beat the crap out of each other, man.
Oh, it's like underwater basketball.
Right? Ugh.
Yeah.
wow.
And they have cameras underwater, and you can see what's going on because they're treading water the whole time, right? They're in a deep pool.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a fate worse than hell.
Yeah. You're not, running along the bottom. Like, you are treading water the whole time, keeping your upper body out of the water. No, thank you.
Did you see the photo of the Kelseys with the women's rugby folks?
Yes.
I'm a huge rugby fan. The men are already out of it, but the Travis and Kylie took a photo with some of, I think, the team members and said, we're all Eagles because, of course, the USA rugby team is the Eagles. And, of course, Travis is on the Eagles. I thought that was so sweet.
Yes,
and the women's rugby is also super intense.
Yeah, one of the friends of the show had posted on social media just about how, I think he called it metal women's rugby is.
Oh, man.
And Team USA player Alona Marr, I want to be her when I grow up.
It's crazy.
Slaver slave.
No.
Flavor
Luetkemeyer, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's great to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
So, I think there's a lot of confusion. We have a hard time keeping straight which amendments are in August and which ones are in November or whatever. But this Amendment 4 concerns police funding, right? So unpack what Constitutional Amendment 4 is, sort of what it says, its genesis, and why people should either be for it or against it.
Well, I'm for it, but Amendment 4 was actually sponsored by me in 2022, and what it does is it changes the state constitution to authorize the legislature to set minimum funding for certain police departments. And I filed this legislation in response to some attempts that your listeners probably are familiar with or may recall from 2021 when the city of Kansas City attempted to defund the KCPD to the tune of over $42 million. And what Amendment 4 will do is it will prevent future radical attempts by big city mayors to defund the police. We've seen this wave of violent crime sweep across our state, and at this critical time, we really need more backing for our police, not less. And that's what a yes vote on Amendment 4 is. It's a vote to back our police officers and to push back against radicals trying to defund them.
Now,
go ahead.
We already voted yes once, though, didn't we?
I thought we did.
We did. So in 2022, Amendment 4 was on the ballot, and it passed overwhelmingly in every county in Missouri. After the vote, the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas, brought a lawsuit to overturn the will of over 1 million Missouri voters who voted in favor of that. And he brought the lawsuit on the grounds that he claimed there was a mistaken fiscal note that accompanied the ballot language. And so the fiscal note was actually written by then Democratic State Auditor Nicole Galloway. And the mayor actually knew about this alleged issue before the election, but he waited until after the vote happened to challenge it. And so there was a split decision by the Missouri Supreme Court 4-3 that ultimately ended up siding with the mayor, and they ordered a new election. So the ballot question that voters voted in favor of in 2022 will be identical. The only difference will be a modified fiscal note at the end of the ballot question.
Okay, so the fiscal note just brings to mind, I guess, a potential criticism here. Could this, as in the education realm, when you set a minimum salary for teachers that, requires a minimum amount of funding, and then the taxpayers in a district are bound to at least partially fund that. So could this potentially go awry and get crazy funding that people would be taxed out of their gourds, in a given jurisdiction because a minimum funding is established? Who's willing to fund this minimum funding?
So no. So the Kansas City Police Department is interesting. Since 1939, it's been under state control, and there's always been a minimum funding threshold for the Kansas City Police Department. Since 1954, that amount was set at 20%. And I amended state statute a couple of years ago, which is the need for Amendment 4, to raise it to 25%. And the reason that's important is because over the last several decades, the Kansas City Police Department has been funded at or around 25% of the city of Kansas City's general revenue. And so if the mayor were allowed to hit the repeat button and do what he did again in 2021, that would mean 1/5 of the department's budget could be wiped out. Well, you can't run the police department with that amount of money missing. As I mentioned before, when the mayor made those cuts in 2021, it amounted to $42 million. So this is really to stabilize the police department's funding to make it consistent with what they've grown accustomed to over the last several decades.
Senator, are you concerned that those individuals who aren't that in the weeds and familiar with the ballot issue and all will read into it that it's a thing to prop up funding for police departments across the state as opposed to just Kansas City?
Well, I think there are two things. Number one, it could certainly apply more broadly in the future. Amendment 4 is written to apply to any police department under state control. So the St. Louis Police Department, for example, used to be under state control, and that changed a few years back. And now the mayor of St. Louis has political control of that department. I think that has been, in my mind, a failed experiment. We've seen skyrocketing crime in St. Louis ever since that happened. I know there are several St. Louis area legislators who have introduced legislation to put St. Louis back under state control, something that I'm very supportive of. And if that were to occur, Amendment 4 would apply. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, voters in Missouri believe that we should back our men and women in law enforcement. And we've seen this defund effort in big cities around the country, and we cannot allow our largest cities in Missouri to become the next Seattle and Portland. That's bad for Missouri. It's bad for people, whether you live in Springfield, whether you live in Columbia, or whether you live in the Boot Heel. It is bad if St. Louis and Kansas City have radical mayors defunding our police.
Again, our guest is State Senator Tony Luetkemeyer, who chairs Judiciary, a very powerful state senator in Jefferson City. He's from a town called Parkville in Kansas City. He's live with us here on 93.9 The Eagle and also News Radio 950 KWS. In answer to Randy's question, it says flat out in the ballot language, no other state or local government entities estimate cost or savings. So that Mr. Ashcroft's fiscal, at least the ballot language, addresses that. Good. Senator, I did this story in November 2022. I'm looking at the story I wrote when we had you on. Basically, it's the same issue as Stephanie points out. And I quoted Mayor Lucas at the time, the mayor of Kansas City, who's still mayor. And this is what he said then, and I'm sure he still feels the same way. He said, Amendment 4, in this case, this is Amendment 4 again, quote, has nothing to do with our city's safety or officer pay and recruitment, and everything to do with advancing the careers of non-KC-based Republican politicians, end of quote. That is a direct quote from the mayor of Kansas City in 2022. Your reaction, sir?
This is totally absurd. First of all, one of the things that the mayor conveniently leaves out is that I represent Kansas City in the state Senate. I have over 75,000 constituents in the Northland of Kansas City who are impacted by his efforts to defund the police. You know, it's really interesting to me also that the mayor, you know, talks about his efforts to defund the police as somehow relating to officer salaries, because when the mayor did that, we actually heard nothing about officer salaries. The fact is that the overwhelming majority of the KCPD's budget is spent on personnel like salaries and benefits. So when the mayor voted in 2021 to defund the KCPD, he actually risked massive officer layoffs. And so the mayor really pivoted to this issue of raising officer pay only after he found out how unpopular his actions were in Kansas City, and that was a cover-up. And, you know, that said, I was happy the year after Amendment 4 passed, I was actually the sponsor of the legislation that removed the salary caps for the Kansas City Police Department and resulted in the largest pay raise in history to those officers.
You know, I know that it kind of sounds like for a lot of people, I hope they actually pay attention and dial in, because for a lot of people, they see Kansas City and they think, I don't live in Kansas City. Now, just 2 weekends ago, I took my family up to see our very first KC Current game, and it was awesome. And I want to be able to take my family there. I know Kansas City has landed a lot of big events and is doing so much, but I want to feel safe when I take my family there. And I think this issue is really important, even for those of us in mid-Missouri.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you know, I would also just say this, too. The nature of a constitutional amendment is that everybody has to vote on it. So sometimes there are constitutional amendments that are on the ballot that may have a more unique impact to one part of the state or the other. But aside from the fact that a statewide vote is required, I think all Missourians do have a stake in public safety in Kansas City. It is the largest city in Missouri. The KCPD is the largest police department in the state. And the lawlessness that would come from the KCPD being defunded, it affects the entire state. As I said before, we cannot allow our largest city in Missouri to become the next Seattle or Portland, and that's why it's so important for all Missourians to come together and make clear that we support our men and women in law enforcement, that we oppose these efforts by radical big city mayors to defund our police, and that's exactly what a yes vote on Amendment 4 is. It's a vote in favor of backing the blue and making sure that we're standing with our brave men and women in law enforcement.
Senator Tony Luetkemeyer joins us today talking about stable support in our large metro areas. I mean, that's really what it's about with this Amendment 4. Isn't it curious, Senator Luetkemeyer, that you, an outstate senator, it has to advocate for the protection of people living in and around and visiting our metro areas? Just if you can give us a little maybe behind the curtain, maybe without names, but if you want to, names are fine. Was there any pushback? Because this is, folks may or may not know that there's two ways to get an amendment on the ballot. One is through the legislative, process, and the other is through the popular initiative petition with, signing the petition at the grocery store. Did you have pushback from St. Louis, Kansas City legislators, or was it pretty easy ride?
No, it was not an easy ride back in 2022 when I originally passed the joint resolution that put Amendment 4 on the ballot. It was largely a partisan vote. I think we had all but one Republican vote in favor of the legislation, and then every Democrat except for one voted against it. So
Holy cow.
It was more or less a straight party vote. You know, I will say that the one name I will mention favorably is that my now former Senate colleague, former Minority Leader John Rizzo, was the one Democrat who voted in favor of that legislation. His brother also is a police officer with the Kansas City Police Department. So I was glad to see at least we had some level of bipartisanship from Senator Rizzo, who was supporting our men and women in law enforcement.
And he was minority. It was significant because he was the minority leader, so the leader of the Democrats. But every one of his every one of Rizzo's Democratic Senate colleagues voted no on it. But the minority leader did vote with Luetkemeyer on this.
At least there's some remnant of integrity in the Democrat Party in the state of Missouri. I mean, that was a beautiful thing to do. It took a little courage to do that, right? Good for him.
Yeah, it did. And I was grateful for JJ doing that.
All right. Again, it's Amendment 4 next Tuesday, and this basically establishes stability funding for police departments in Missouri, right? I mean, that's what it's about.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Amendment 4 is to stabilize police funding, make sure that we can't have radical mayors to fund the police department. This is something that's been already endorsed by Mike Kehoe, who's running for governor. Our junior United States Senator Eric Schmidt has endorsed it, as well as both of our Republican congressmen from the Kansas City area. So for all of your listeners, get out, vote yes on Amendment 4.
All right. Hey, thanks for illustrating clearly the why and the what about Amendment 4 and encouraging everyone to get out there. Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Senator Tony Luetkemeyer. Isn't that ironic that an outstate senator has
French newspapers, the BBC, say there are significant issues with food supplies, including the rationing of eggs at breakfast and a lack of grilled meats. The mega caterer, Sodexo Live, you might remember Sodexo from your college days, they're responsible for providing over 13 million meals and manage 6 main dining areas. They have some challenges with the high-performance athletes and a dissatisfaction, they're saying, with portion sizes and the lack of high-protein options. Some athletes, like Olympic swimmers, may eat 10,000 calories a day. And now it's prompted the Brits, Team Great Britain, refusing to eat in the Olympic restaurants and being served that uncooked meat. They have moved on to flying in their own extra chefs to cook for the athletes at their performance centers. The Olympic chefs have previously boasted 40,000 meals would be prepared daily in the village, and now say, as for the egg shortage, the caterer says, their words, not ours, they are scrambling to solve the problem. Now you know the rest of that half-eaten story.
I mean, come on, of all the foods to be short on when you're serving elite athletes eggs and grilled meats?
Yeah.
Come on.
Protein and carbs, and mainly protein and protein.
Yeah.
These French are drinking too much of their own wine as they organize this thing. I don't understand it. I mean,
kind of
crazy.
wonder, don't you?
I mean, they got the condoms covered. You talked about that last week. I mean, they
And
got
the
that
cardboard
locked
bags.
down.
Hannah talked about that.
No, not you.
No, John did.
John did.
John
Don't
did.
put that on me. I'm offended.
So to speak.
But no, seriously, I mean, that's been clearly, they got that nailed down. They got that all covered, but they can't feed these
Pretty much.
people? I mean,
Well, and like 10,000 calories, that's a lot of food. I mean, that's 5 times what most people should be eating. But I've been around folks who, I don't know that I've been around professional athletes, but certain collegiate, like D1 athletes. And I remember they were just always eating, especially in some of the sports where you're expected to maintain the muscle.
Oh, you ever
have
been to a football training table at that level?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm raising a son right now, and I sometimes am amazed at how much food those teenage boys or about to be teenage boys eat. But I mean, that seems like priority number one, like sleep and food, right?
Pretty much.
Well, and speaking of sleep, I mean, we're hearing a lot about how uncomfortable the beds are. Of course, on TikTok, I'm seeing lots of, videos from Olympians, and a lot of them, the teams like overnighted like mattress toppers.
Yeah.
yeah.
Simone Biles did.
Yeah, to try to make the beds more comfortable.
That's smart, though.
You know, I did enjoy one human interest story and fabulous athlete story. This Frenchman, I think he's 18 or 19 years old, maybe a little now older, who was trained by Bob Bowman, who was Michael Phelps' trainer. He's world champion. He just blew on the medley. He just blew the competition away. I mean, it was like Leah Thomas versus the girls. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, he just by 5 or 6 seconds?
Yeah, we watched that one live. It was awesome.
And
not live, but like the live replay.
I get the biggest kick out of them when you watch the underwater, when they make the turn. They look like porpoises. It's just amazing. I just think, man, this swimming is the ultimate.
Well, and I like how they put how fast they're going on there, too, because sometimes it's hard. They're so close, it's hard to tell, and you're like, oh, no, he's slowing down. Speed up, speed up. It's that part's really fun.
I did see online this morning that this is the first Olympics where there's the same number of female and male athletes.
Oh, wow.
So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
Yep, there's 5,250 of each.
Wow. 10,500 athletes.
It's a lot of eggs. That's a
And
lot
the
of
first
eggs.
Olympics for breakdancing is an Olympic
Yes.
sport.
Are you kidding me? No, come on.
I bet they play
Yes.
Flava Flav.
I wonder if Slave is in there. All right. We'll be back with more Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Stay tuned.
Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters. This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Get ready, pal.
Here's your host, Randy Tobler.
Well, welcome back into the third hour of Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's just a few short days. I mean, we're just talking essentially a week now before the polls open for a huge primary election. And Stephanie, according to the latest Missouri Scout poll that we were talking about earlier with Scott Faughn, in case you missed it, you can catch it on the podcast later or on the archived Facebook. It's really tight. Governor, Secretary of State, CD3.
Yeah, it's going to be really important. I think a lot of it's going to come down to turnout, and so I think it's going to be really important for folks to wake up and turn out. And I try to just talk to the average people. We're kind of in our little bubble here, and was hanging out with the good folks of Cooper County this weekend, and of course they're all clued in and they want to hear from the candidates that are ready to vote. But I don't know that everyone is, so it's important that folks know that we have an election in 8 days, and also that you can get out and vote actually today. You can do no excuse absentee voting, whatever county you're in. Check your clerk's website, but typically you can go into your county clerk's office and go ahead and vote. You years ago you used to have to say, I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to be incapacitated. I'm having surgery that day, whatever.
Have to work.
Yeah, have to work. I think there were like 5 or 6 enumerated excuses. But once we get inside this 2-week period, you don't need that. So, for example, I know this Saturday in Boone County, there is voting. I believe it's 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., but it will be at the Centralia Library, Hannah. I don't know where that is in town, but I assume everyone knows what that is. And then
it's in Centralia. You can't miss it.
Yeah, and same for they'll be at the Ashland Library there at the Southern Boone Library. And so that's a really easy way. And Randy, have you ever done early voting here recently?
No, not recently, no.
I did it here real recently there at the library in Ashland, and it was so easy.
Worked
I was
great.
in and out. You can park like right outside the door. I mean, it took 5 minutes.
I was going to say, I'm actually considering doing this just because, I live almost an hour away from where I vote.
Yeah.
Or from where I work. So it's a lot of miles to go vote on Election Day. I might go check this out.
Yeah, I went to the Cole County Clerk's office the other day, and boom, and I was out, like Steph said, in 5 minutes.
And right there in downtown, if you don't know, you pay your end of the year taxes down on level 1 of the annex, and the clerk's office is just upstairs from that. If you're in Cole County and you haven't visited the county clerk's office in person, John, but it was easy.
No, it didn't take any time at all.
Yeah.
We work so closely with those folks. We know them all, but it was like, yeah, here you go.
And I'll confirm I'm on Brianna Lennon's website, August 3rd, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's this Saturday at the Southern Boone Library and Centralia Public Library. You can go ahead and cast your ballot. I know yesterday when it was, did anyone else drive through that like monsoon pouring down rain? It was horrible. Mm-hmm. But there are some people out there who the rain affects, I don't want to get out of my car. I don't want to get wet. I don't want to, whatever. Stuff goes wrong on Election Day. Maybe your car breaks down. If it's a pretty day and you've got some extra time, there is no reason why you shouldn't vote early. The Democrats are doing it, and I'm going to tell you this in November too. The Democrats take advantage of it, and if they're playing by those rules, then we've got to play by those rules and do it as well. So in November, I'm going to tell you to vote early, but in the primary, vote early. They count the votes. I promise they're doing their best. I have no reason to believe that a vote cast this Saturday at the Ashland Public Library does not count the exact same as a vote that is happening on Election Day on Tuesday.
Will the same rules apply in the general? Will it be the same deal?
Yeah, no excuse absentee then as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. And you've heard that out of the RNC from Laura Trump and other folks and said, hey, the rules have changed. The Democrats do a great job, and they did this to us in the midterms. They do a great job of turning people out early, and that they've been doing that for years. We've got to get our game together and do the same thing. And so you're going to continue to hear this from me. And I know there are people out there who say, ooh, early voting, and I would agree. If we were making the choice of if there was a public policy choice of vote on Election Day or early voting, I'm not for early voting. I'm not, generally. But that choice has already been made for us. We have early voting. So now we have to learn how to use the rules to our advantage.
Yeah. You may not like the rules, and you can work with your legislative representative, your senator, your rep to try to change things. That's fine. But if those are the rules we're playing by, we better play better than the other team.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So Brianna Lennon's going to be with us. Brianna's going to be with us at 8:08 tomorrow, right? So she's going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what her projected turnout is and talk about some of the other opportunities, I think, is there any other opportunity for early voting that's out and about? I know August 3rd you mentioned on Saturday.
This last weekend they were at Columbia Mall and Douglas High School, I know.
Yeah. Okay. So there's really no excuse not to get in there and vote. I mean, now, you can't say. I remember one time I got caught either in delivery room or operating room or something, and I'd planned on going after work, and bingo, something happened. And it was a minor election. It was just like a little municipal election. But I felt really bad about it the whole time. So it's good to have this opportunity. If there's any chance that you think you might get caught up, maybe maybe you're planning to drop the kids off at their game at 6 o'clock and be back by 7 o'clock when the polls close. What happens if there's a wreck? What happens if something?
Yeah, your kid breaks their arm at baseball or,
God forbid.
So many things. I mean, but I've heard that, like a random, so you had a plan and then there's a random thing and you just literally can't get there. So vote early. And it's so weird to say that, but we have it now in Missouri. You should take advantage of it.
All right. Caller John is on line 1. How you doing, Caller John? What's on your mind?
Well, I was just wondering why would anybody vote early? If it's just one vote, it doesn't matter when you vote. I did hear you explaining a little bit there might be an emergency for you in particular on voting day, and so maybe it would be better to have voted early, but it just seems like a weird thing to do for me.
It's not traditional, no doubt about it. But again, if there's any circumstance in your life that you're worried that, maybe you're seeking medical care for something, you can think of a million scenarios where, oh man, if it doesn't take much to go wrong or go different than planned, and oh man, I missed the vote,
Yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah, but that could be said about literally anything. I could miss a dentist appointment or a doctor. I mean,
you can reschedule your dentist appointment. If you wait till the last day to vote and you don't vote, you don't get to re-vote. It's over. You lost your vote.
So you're looking at it as kind of a safety, make sure you get your vote in.
It's an insurance policy against missing your vote. That's what it is. Yeah. I'm against it. I would like to see, I think, a weekend of voting, a Saturday, Sunday. Who couldn't get out on a weekend to vote?
I think we should have a 2-day vote.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the weekend or the weekdays, but I think you should have 2 days to vote, and there should be a law that if you have an employer, they must allow you to be off on one of those 2 days.
There is a law already that it's not a full day off, but they have to allow you time to vote.
Yeah. And the problem is, I think a lot of people don't take advantage of that because they don't want to get the stink eye in one way or another from the employer, which is sad.
Yeah. Well, it's harder to do with only one day. If that's the day your employer needs you, that's the day your employer needs. It would be easier with 2 different days.
So if we were to have okay, so John, let's follow this. If we develop this more, if it was a 2-day, would it be better to have like a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday, Monday, so that folks that work the weekends, there are a lot of places where they have weekend packages. I know some of the hospitals have just a weekend package, and nurses will just work weekends. So then you're left out in the cold there. Maybe it should straddle. It should be a weekday and a weekend, all back to back. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I'd be for that.
I think it depends on what party you're for, because if I'm a conservative, then I just back up all these yellow dogs to the church at noon, and I bust them straight from the church over to the polls. I mean, if we're going to change the rules, we should make sure we're changing them in our favor, I guess, like the Democrats like to do.
Hey,
I think each vote should come with a free pizza, too.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Quiz me this. Do you think that you should at least be able to name? Should there be some minimum understanding of the government in order to
Brady
vote?
wants an IQ test.
No, not an IQ test. But should you be able to say how many branches of government there are?
I don't know. You're starting to get into Jim Crow stuff now.
Yeah, Randy.
But by the same token, I mean, shouldn't you? I don't know, man. It troubles me.
Poor listener, John. He didn't sign up for any of these questions.
We got to run, brother. Thank you much. Appreciate it. You don't think there should be any?
No.
including you don't have to be a citizen then either, right?
Well, like
if you're here, you should vote.
you've
You
already
have to be a
done your due
citizen.
diligence by registering to vote.
No, not really.
No, you've just
I mean-
showed a photo ID and said you're
No,
American
you've
citizen.
gone and gotten your driver's license, and
But why
you
does
basically get
citizenship matter?
And they
automatically
said, how about
registered.
motor voter?
I'm going to
Yeah.
challenge this. I always like to, you know me, I like to argue the absurd to make a point.
Here we go.
No, wait, Hannah.
What?
Hang
What?
on. Why does it matter if you're a citizen? Because if citizenship and the accoutrements that go with it, including having some engagement with that membership in this great family we call the American experiment, why does it matter then? Why? Who cares if you're a citizen? Why not just be
I
from
care.
Venezuela? I say if it's required to be a citizen, you should darn well have some engagement and at least know how many branches of government
Because
there
our right as a citizen is to be free from the government. And what you're saying is that the government would decide who's smart enough or knowledgeable enough to vote. Because
I think if we're not mistaken, there was a 15th Amendment about that very thing, wasn't it?
it's the same as red flag laws. When you're thinking, who's scary enough that I need to grab their guns? The question is, who decides who is good enough to vote, right? Whether you're smart enough, whether you know the three branches of government and what you need to know. The only entity that could be that thing is the government, and that would be horrible if the government decided that for us.
You make a point, but I still think that we have I just think that you ought to know a little
You want
bit about
Kamala to decide who's going to vote?
So what gives you? So you're okay with someone that has absolutely zero engagement, except watching a TV commercial that says, "I'm running for an office and I'm going to take from Stephanie and give to you if you vote for me." That's okay. You don't want any knowledge of civics, of citizenship, of what this country's about.
I don't want the government telling the people who can vote and who can't.
Yeah.
They painted us for years as knuckle-dragging, flyover, stupid Midwesterners. I mean, if those folks just got to decide who to vote, none of us would be voting,
However,
right?
but you want them to be citizens. Why does it matter? Citizenship must matter. There must be some substance to being a citizen other than your mama dropped you on the
What
prairie.
about the southern states back in the 1870s that instituted a literacy test for blacks and a poll tax?
It doesn't take literacy to know how many branches of government there are. That could be done through a verbal tradition. You don't need to be able to read, write, or do any arithmetic to know. Can you name the president? If you can't name the president, really? Hello?
It's a slippery slope, Randy.
Oh, you slippery slopes. I don't know. Okay, I guess I lost another one there. Let's see what Joe has to say. Quickly, Joe.
Hey, I'm with you, Randy, on this one. I think that we should bring back standards in the United States. I think there should be a health standard for everything, and that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's... You could come up... Thanks a lot, Joe. You could come up with some minimum expectation that if you're going to exercise the privilege to vote, it is a privilege to be a citizen and to vote in this country.
If you're going to impose some sort of knowledge test on me, then first we need to impose it. I'm with Nikki Haley on this, on the candidates themselves. Make them take the test and then talk to me about a test.
Well, we can have that discussion.
See, you should be watching us on Facebook or YouTube Live because the second anyone texts or calls us and agrees with Randy, he instantly grows like 2 inches. He puffs out his chest like, well.
Now wait a minute.
Your
Wait a minute,
face
though.
changes.
From now and again. I got Stephanie giving me the finger here now and then. She's giving me the wagging the finger now and then. Now, one thing you haven't done was this. You don't do that. That's good. I haven't seen that yet.
big after after a wild ride for the entire week. But for Friday, we were up big, over 1%. Let's see, NASDAQ just up over 1%, S&P 1.11%, and Dow up 1.64%. Huge. The sectors that were really driving those gains, materials and industrials, were up really big on Friday. And what we're seeing this morning actually is everything is in the green. So might be another good day on the market. Now, it is one of our, who on the text line informed us of this? That it's
Randy.
Randy told us, not Dr. Randy. Told us it is officially today a national holiday, and that national holiday would be National Chicken Wing Day.
Whoop, whoop.
Which, is there anything better than a really good chicken wing? I don't know. I used to not be a big fan, but man, they're good. Okay. We had some chicken wing news last week, though, that we didn't get to, and we needed to.
We were just saving it for National Chicken Wing Day.
I know. What I do want to let you know is there are tons of specials from local businesses for National Chicken Wing Day. So, like, if you're a big chicken wing fan, check it out, because a lot of people are celebrating. So get in on that today. But last week, the Ohio Supreme Court, you think they deal with these like really weighty issues like taxes, life, all these really important things. And Ohio Supreme Court wrote a long opinion about chicken wings. And it was a close vote, too. It was a 4-3 vote. But a man had gone to a wings place there in Ohio, had eaten, I think he ate like one or two of these boneless wings, which you should you should go directly to jail if you order a boneless wing.
Watch your mouth, okay? Those are the best kind.
No.
The boneless ones?
Absolutely not.
Not for this guy, it wasn't.
Yeah, gross. Well, so it's just like a glorified chicken nugget. Anyway,
yeah, I agree.
He grabs a basket of these, downs like two of them. On the third one, he's like, well, that felt weird. That felt like it went down the wrong pipe. And then like a day later, he gets a bad fever and starts getting sick, goes into the emergency room, and apparently he had swallowed a chicken bone, a small one, and it had like punctured his esophagus. He ended up with 2 surgeries. And then, of course, anybody who's in with the trial lawyers sued everybody and their brother and said, you sold me a boneless chicken wing and it had a bone in it. And the court said, just, anybody who knows what boneless wings are made out of, chickens, knows that chickens have bones. And, and so
the establishment prevailed.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this guy was not a winner.
He was not a winner chicken dinner. They said, just like when you eat chicken fingers, you don't actually think you're eating
rockets into northern Israel, but they've stopped short of targeting major cities like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. If the Israelis go on the offensive tonight and strike targets around Beirut or other Hezbollah strongholds, it could be another step up on the escalation ladder, but they are really left with what officials here on the ground tell us is no other choice but to respond following the tragic attack that took the lives of 12 young people. And
so you may have heard about this attack from Hezbollah using an Iranian missile that happened over the weekend into a community in northern Israel. Apparently they're an Islamic, but sort of like a separate type of a moderate Islamic group. They don't allow people to transition in, to convert in or out. It's sort of a cloistered community, almost 1 million strong throughout the Middle East there in that area.
They're called the Druze.
The Druze, Druze, in Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. And it sounds, John, sort of like a pastoral community, right? It sounds like they're sort of pacifist in a way. They just mind their own business and stay out of everyone's way, and they live in Israel peacefully, and everyone's good. And these kids were playing soccer, and the crater just hit right there. And the guy Trey Yinks described workers that responded and police officers and others afterwards walking around with cups in plastic gloves, just taking, human remains off the field, of these kids, and dozens more injured as well. And so Hezbollah has made this attack. Now, there's been back and forth between Hezbollah and Israel since the October 7th last year. However, there's speculation this may raise the ante over there, and that Israel is, in fact, they will. It's not a matter of if, but when, and it's a matter of when and how strong will be the response. Israel never doesn't respond, right? Usually with more force than was used, as we've seen in Gaza. This thing is a powder keg over there, or am I overreading it? I just think it's a big powder keg.
Oh, big time. They're talking about a wider war spread back into, how many times has Israel gone into Lebanon?
And what does that mean for our foreign policy and for the Kamala Harris candidacy? Because she's got herself in a little weird place, right?
She is in a really weird place. And I know also, the U.S. issued warnings to any U.S. citizens over there about the ongoing conflict. And who's running the show in the White House? Again, if I am a foreign leader watching what's happening in the U.S., I strike now.
Yeah.
I don't wait until January because I know that there's failure of leadership at the top. And
haven't we seen a slow burn on that, really, with Iran just flexing its muscles in
China floating a balloon over our country? I am terrified about the next.
Russian and Chinese bombers flying together off of Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, they're just basically daring. How far will it push, right? They just keep pushing the bear, and the bear's not responding. And, it's just like they dare us to have a spine.
And they know Donald Trump will not stand for that. And so if they think that he is going to come into office in January, I think they know that their time is limited.
It's an interesting policy position that Harris and the Democrats have themselves in, because they're trying to have it both ways, and that generally doesn't work in politics. I think that Americans would rather have a politician that, hey, I agree with you on 90% of what you're about. We can disagree about 10%, and I'm still going to vote for it. But they're so wishy-washy on it. She doesn't show up to Netanyahu's speech and preside over the Senate as she should, or the joint session as she should, but yet she meets with him and then, according to reports, offends him during the conversations there, and comes out and tries to make this presidential statement looking like a co-president or the president, and trying to have it all different ways. We just want everyone to get along, enough of the divisiveness. But really, 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 they're pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas. They are.
She has to be. That's where a lot of the people in her party are. And and I think she's going to try to walk that line so she can try to get elected.
You look in states like Minnesota, which is a high Islamic population there, Michigan, a high Islamic population there. You've got to wonder, and then now she's going to, we'll make it all right with the Jewish community. We'll get Governor Shapiro from Pennsylvania. Do people in the electorate, those who are engaged, well, maybe that's the problem, do they finally realize, and I think the black community's come out about this more and more with the Trump campaign, saying, we've been pandered to enough, and no one's going to own us with their rhetoric and all of the, little handout here and a little there, program here. Have some real policy like Trump did. That you're hearing more and more black Americans and influencers say that. When do people that would normally traditionally support the Democrats say, man, you guys you'll give to the college students here, you'll give to the immigrants there, you'll give to the Palestinians there? Will they be smart enough to figure it out?
I hope so. I think the Democrats are going to have to make a choice, because I was just checking. It is 3 weeks from today that they have their convention. And so they are going to have to parade people on that stage, and those people are going to be saying something. And I don't think they can be silent on this issue.
No.
And so they're going to have to make up their minds. And I don't think they're going to be able to play both sides of that card from that stage. And so I think all eyes are going to be on that stage. I think it couldn't have gone better at the RNC for Republicans.
Right.
I don't know is it going to look like the opening ceremony of the Olympics? Is it going to look like the horrible protests that took place in D.C.? Is there going to be violence? I don't know what they're planning, but I know I'm going to be tuned in that week to see just what they are telling people they stand for that week.
That's right. And can you really thread that needle when there's clearly a right and a wrong in this discussion, right? The Israelis didn't ask for that October 7th attack. They are worldwide renowned for doing the very best that a military force can do in trying to prevent civilian crossfire casualties. And so there's two issues. One is sort of the tactical issue of how do you support, and do you support, and when do you support Israel and versus Hamas, and now Hezbollah, it looks like. We'll be reporting on that before week's out, I'm sure. Israel's going to come out with fury, shock and awe against Hezbollah. But the larger position is, Trump has done a good job of sort of making it clear that we don't want to get involved in foreign entanglements. But if an American happens to be in an foreign entanglement, God have grace on you, because my God, we're not going to have any mercy on you if you're a foreigner.
How many Americans died in the Hamas attacks? Like almost 50.
And what do we have? 8? Do we have 8 hostages over there still? I believe. And so I agree with the rhetoric coming from the Trump campaign that had Trump in office, I don't think this would have happened. I just don't think that foreign bad guys, wherever they are across the globe, would have felt as though they had the license to act out like they're doing.
It's hard to say. Obviously, I know that one of the things that supporters of President Reagan said is that had he been in office, the Iranians wouldn't have taken hostages in 1979. But I remind our listeners, 1983 in Beirut, there was a big bombing, and there were a couple of hundred Marines that got killed as well. I agree with you and Stephanie. It is going to be interesting to watch. I was not here the day after President Biden made his announcement, but one thing I definitely want to point out, because I've heard people reference it. They talk about 1968 and the fact that Lyndon Johnson didn't run again. There are some similarities, no question. But the big difference in 1968 is that Hubert Humphrey was running against Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, former vice president. Hubert Humphrey, very capable candidate who spoke over in Fulton at Westminster College. But what people forget, and this is the biggest difference, Humphrey had on his right flank a guy named not just Strom Thurmond, that was 1948. He had a guy named George Wallace, 1968. At that time, all the southern states voted Democratic. Wallace got about 45 electoral votes, as I recall. I know he carried 4 or 5 states, but he took a lot of votes away in the North from working class, the hard hatters, you could argue. A lot of those were white people that generally had voted for Democrats. So will there be comparisons between that and Robert F. Kennedy? Perhaps, but whenever I hear these reporters on national TV mention 1968, I've not heard of one of them mention the fact George Wallace had a huge role in that election, and it was very, very close. It was a very close election because Wallace happened to be in there.
Well, this election is going to be close.
Too.
It is.
Yes.
I think until the change that happened last weekend, not this past, but the previous weekend, I think it was pretty clear it was Trump's to lose. I mean, I don't think anyone would have expected it would have been as close as it now will be. You keep asking the question, is it going to be unforced errors? Like, is it an unforced error on the part of the Trump campaign to have taken on a J.D. Vance who made a comment about childless cat ladies, when, in fact, a lot of women are probably going to be the people that make the difference in this. And whether women are childless or not, by choice or not, or whether they have a family of 3 or 5 or 7 that they've had, or that there's a blended family, how is this going to impact woman's world? Stephanie, do you think it's going to just fade into nothingness and it's just a little flash in the pan now? Or will that comment really hurt politically?
For J.D. Vance?
For J.D. Vance and the Trump campaign.
I think it's the thing of the day for today.
Hannah?
Do I think it's going to hold water or what?
Yeah, do you think, I'd like, for those of you listening, 573-874-9390 between now and the end of the show, text me. I mean, is this so highly offensive to you that you couldn't vote for Trump Vance even if you like most of their stances?
Kamala called Hannah's entire generation stupid last week, right?
That is true.
But
she said that like in current times and means it.
But Hannah dismissed that as just a joke. Aren't we? In fact, she said, aren't we? You said, well, that's true. You said that.
I did say that.
I don't disagree. But.
And I mean, I think what he's trying to say and what he was arguing about, because it's a big deal, it really is. What he's arguing is about, look, how can people who have made a willful choice not to have children, because there are a lot of people that, there's a infertility, is about a 10 to 20% incidence, 20% probably realistically. But those who willfully decide not to have children, he claims that they dominate the ruling class. And does that further affect policy that may not be as pro-family as it would be otherwise? I mean, if he'd have said it like that, I don't think we'd be having this discussion. But when you get out there and say, yeah, we're ruled by a bunch of childless cat ladies, oh my God, JD.
I think the bigger question is right now, how is Kamala going to play to that whole women's vote with her selection of vice president? I mean, we hear a lot about Josh Shapiro, and he's kind of been all over the place on the supporting Israel and supporting the protesters and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I just wonder what she may do for a VP pick, or be told to do for one.
And there is a candidate running for statewide office in Pennsylvania who has been critical of Josh Shapiro, and the party chair of Pennsylvania is kind of upset that she said some things publicly, but that is interesting. A lot of it has to do, Randy, to your question, what type of topics will the next moderator. The moderator is the key in these debates. What kind of topics will they be discussing, and are they issues that really matter to voters across the country and specifically to our audience? The biggest thing I can tell you that I heard, I've talked to voters, and I'm sure you both did as well, out at the presidential debate watch party. The issue I heard over and over and over again was inflation, number one, in the border. And at least from, I don't know if that's scientific, but that's what I heard about. And then a few other things as well. Didn't really hear much about anything else. So yeah. I don't know if that's nationwide, or certainly that was our local audience as well. But I watched, last thing I'd say about this, I rewatched a debate between Gerald Ford and Jimmy Carter last week. And I was struck by the quality of the questioning. And it's just changed so much. I don't know if if people just
back and forth. Give me that. No, I need that. Nope, over here. Nope, over there. What about over there? Nope, what about there? Nope, give me that. I need that. That too. Nope, sit down somewhere. Get down. Wait a minute. Hold it. Way up in the sky. Now down. Back up. Over there. Now over here. Get out the way. Move. I told you we need that.
That was a good point.
What was that?
That is Snoop Dogg doing play-by-play for badminton
Love it.
at the Olympics.
That's great. Yeah, he's rapping the badminton call. That's
right.
great.
No, he wasn't rapping. He's just talking fast.
No, but I'm saying
It was
it's sort of
doubles badminton, so he had a lot to do there.
he's using the same skills.
Yeah, so if he does play-by-play that quickly, he's going to be very tired by the end of a match.
That's amazing.
I did hear sort of a heartwarming thing. Snoop is doing this big partnership with the Olympics. He's doing play-by-play and commentary for a lot of the sports. But apparently he's terrified of horses. And so he refused to do the dressage. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. Which is one of the horse events. And so he called Martha Stewart. And Martha Stewart's going to come do that event for him. So I thought that was funny.
That's great. Wonder why he'd be afraid of horses. That's interesting. Wonder if maybe he got kicked once or had a bad fell off one. I don't know.
Probably not a lot of horses in the inner city except with cops on them, maybe, you know.
Is pickleball, is the obsession international yet? Has there been a push to put pickleball in the Olympics if they're doing badminton?
I wonder.
Well, badminton's been in the Olympics for a long time.
I know, but I just think pickleball's gotten so popular here, I would suspect it would have gotten a push there. Now, a couple of Jefferson City tidbits over the weekend. Downtown Jefferson City did some kind of fun thing with their summer shopping event, and they did Christmas in July this weekend. Saw a lot of really fun pictures. It looks like it was a really good turnout, and I know a lot of the shops are doing sales. I also saw the News Tribune building there in downtown has now completely been razed.
Yeah, just a vacant lot.
Yeah, that happened very quickly. Yeah. And then I also saw, I thought this was fun, Bob Drainer and the Landing Zone restaurant at Jefferson City Memorial Airport is celebrating 3 years.
Wow.
In Jefferson City. So a lot of fun, good things happening in Jefferson City.
You know, we talked about National Chicken Wing Day.
Yeah.
It's also National Lasagna Day.
Yum.
Now there's tension. What to do? Well, maybe one
chicken
for lunch.
wing lasagna.